जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना। 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 यमुना तीरवनचारी। जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना। Yashodanandan Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandan Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Gurudev 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 Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Jayam Vishnu Pad Param Sarjagacharya Stotra Shata Shri Shrimad Srila Abhay Charan Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Thakur Haridas Ki Jai Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Giridhar Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Devi Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Tulsi Rani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Harinama Sankirtana Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Samsthapak Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Thank you. Thank you. Om Agnanatimirandhasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yudaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I was asked to speak from Bhagavat Gita as it is today, although it was scheduled, Brihad Bhagavatamritam. We're going to speak from Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, which is entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized, Arjuna starts a new passage when he asks Krishna, what is the character of a person who is situated in transcendental consciousness? And Krishna answers, maybe the best thing to do is just to read each of these verses, because it's just maybe 10 verses or so. Beginning with text 54. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? How does he walk? And Krishna said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. one who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called the sage of steady mind. In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. He says, when one who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains, but ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he's fixed in consciousness. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. Raga dvesha vimuktaistu vishayan indriyaischaran atmavashyer vidhyatma prasadam adhigachati. But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanir asya upajayate prasanna chetaso hyasho buddhi parivatishthate. For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. Here, there's no purport to text 65, which is a famous verse here at ISV. The word prasada has many different meanings. Most Sanskrit words do. But let's read Srila Prabhupada's purport to get some insight into this, and we'll say a few words as well. Purport to text number 64. It's already explained that one may externally control the senses by some artificial process, but unless the senses are engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there's every chance of a fall. Although the person in full Krishna consciousness may apparently be on the sensual plane, because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he's transcendental to all attachment and detachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable. And if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control, because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform. Vande Shri Guru Devam Tam Karuna Varunalayam Yat Kripal Lavane Leshena Pamaropyam Arayate Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Prasadam Adhigach, there are two things being stated here. First thing is, Vidheyatma prasadam adhigachati. The person whose life he lives according to regulative principles. A person who leads his life in terms of some principle is called Vidheyatma. And that person gets prasadam. Then the second thing being stated here is that person's buddhi is pariavatishtate. It's well established. It's unshakable. Everything else in these two verses really just explains how this transpires. They're just details, important details. But this is the core sentence here. Vidheyatma prasadam adhigachati asya buddhi paryavatishtate cha. So, what does it mean? Vidheya atma. Vidheya atma means a person who is living in terms of vidhi, injunctions. In the end of chapter 16, famous verse, Krishna says, a couple of verses there, he says, a person who gives up regulative principles and just acts whimsically according to his desires. Yashastra vidhim utsrujya vartate kamakarataha nasa siddhim avapnoti. He doesn't get any perfection. Nasa siddhim avapnoti nasukham na param gatim. He doesn't get happiness, what to speak of the supreme destination. So that person is frustrated. Tasmat, therefore, he says, Tasmat shastra vidhanoktam karya kartami harhasi. You should understand what you should do and what you should not do on the basis of what the Shastra tells you to do and what not to do. Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya vijanata. And one who does this is called Vidheyatma. And this Vidheyatma, he gets prasadam. And prasadam means what? Mercy? That's how it's translated here. Anything else? Prasadam? Huh? Big plate. Big plate full of Brahma Sokhyam. Tasmad Shudye Brahma Sokhyam tu anantam. Indradunna Swami, I think it was, he described when he first joined ISKCON, one of the first persons who preached to him was Brahmananda Swami. And Brahmananda was very big. Big-hearted and big-bodied. So he said he watched him single-handedly. While he ate one plate of prasadam, Brahmananda quaffed 5 plates. Just like that. That's called Brahma Sokhyam tu anantam. Unlimited spiritual happiness. So yeah, that is in fact another definition of prasadam. Here, according to Baladev Vidyabhushan, in this verse, prasadam actually means vimala mana. Vimala mana. To have a pure mind. That's very interesting. When your mind is pure, then you're no longer disturbed by so many things that agitate a person whose mind is not pure. And Vidheyatma is the person who can have a pure mind. Actually, this is described later on in Bhagavat Gita as well. At the end of chapter 7, anybody know the verse I'm thinking of? Yesham tu antagatam papam jananam. Those persons whose papa is gone, they're no longer in that world. Jananam punya karnamanam. They're acting now as well in pious activities. In other words, they're acting in accordance with, because to act in a pious way means to follow the injunctions of the scriptures only. And you might be surprised to learn, well, you might not be surprised to learn, but many of us might be surprised to learn that the scriptures actually regulate virtually every waking moment of our lives. And that's a very it's a great challenge for those who are not born into a culture that is by nature, well, vidheyatma. So this is it's a great challenge actually for the uncivilized person to become civilized. And only a civilized person, that is to say, only a human being, can take to Krishna consciousness. We know this throughout the Shastra, it's very clear. Animals cannot take to Krishna consciousness, and we often point out that Krishna consciousness or humanity is not defined just in terms of biology. It's defined in terms of dharma. It's defined in terms of adherence to regulative principles. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada said a person who cannot follow regulative principles is an animal. And this person is unable to take to Krishna consciousness. That's why Krishna says, Te dvandva, he says, Te dvandva moha nirmukta, the person who follows regulative principles, or the person who is socialized according to regulative principles, that person becomes freed from so much duality and from so much illusion that proceeds from that duality, such that he has an easy time sustaining a mature commitment to pure devotional service. Another person whose mind is still sinful, you may give him good instructions, but he cannot take them, or he may take them, but he will twist and twangle and turn them into something else. Why? Because we're in Silicon Valley, so we can say here that person does not have the system requirements to run this software. That's really what it comes down to. The mind-body complex are not sufficient. So this is a very, very important verse here in chapter 7. Yesham twantagatam papam jananam punyakarmanam te dvanvamoha nirmukta bhajante mam drhavrataha. Drhavrata also indicates this person is following with firm determination. Have you noticed that it takes firm determination to follow regulative principles, to chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra every single day? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Where's Vrindavan? Vrindavan today has already chanted 16 rounds. How old is Vrindavan? He's 9 years old. 8 years, huh? 8 years old, almost 9. Usually when you ask the kids, how old are you? 8.5. They want to make sure you know that they're almost 9. And when you ask somebody my age, how old are you? Well, I'm in my 50s. Anyway, so this is the hint here in chapter 7, text 28. Krishna is telling us, that if you want to know what it takes to be able to really become Vimalatma or Vidheyatma or to get prasadam from the Lord, this is what it takes. You have to be fixed in this consciousness of acting according to the instructions of the Lord and His representatives. Now, many times, we're okay to accept the instructions of the Lord because with nobody watching us, we can twist and twangle those too. Therefore, we're okay with Krishna, but we don't like the devotees. Or we don't like the acharyas, or we want to do it our own way, or sometimes people, why can't I just, somebody asked me the other day, how come I can't just chant Hare Krishna? Why do I have to accept a spiritual master? You see, because a spiritual master, you come to the temple and see Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, no matter what you've just done, they will smile. But if you come in front of the spiritual master, then he's going to let you know what the problem is. You see? So this is why it's a good thing. Now, the Dharma Shastra and the spiritual master, they serve a very similar function. In fact, anyway, we can say, they both have the responsibility to take these abstract principles that one should live according to, the Shastra Siddhanta, as we say. and to translate that into ground level action, practical endeavor here in the everyday workaday world, as we say. The spiritual master has that responsibility. The Smriti Shastra also has that responsibility. That's why it's so voluminous. And that's why we have many different spiritual masters. It's a very great responsibility. So when a person can do this, then that person becomes dvandva moha nirmukta, freed from so many delusions. Delusions and also so many bad habits and so many misconceptions, so much ignorance, so much bewilderment and heartache and suffering that results from this dvandva. Dvandva means happiness, distress, loss, gain, fame, infamy, all these things. We, to the extent that our consciousness is invested in this mind-body complex and its wants, not our wants, not Krishna's wants, its wants in the material world, to that extent we have to suffer. And these people are called dvandva moha. Dvandva moha. So Krishna says the person who has fixed himself in piety, punyatma means the same thing as vidheyatma. He's become pious by determining himself or herself to follow these principles and live according to these principles, and to do so not only every day, but all day long, every day. Sometimes we're good devotees in the morning. By the afternoon or by the evening, we're semi-karmis. Tamal Krishna Goswami said this very astutely. He said in the morning sometimes, especially those of us who are working, you know what it's like. In the outside world, you have your sadhana, you feel fresh and ready to go for the day. By the end of the day, you're dragged down. And you feel just so exhausted by the process of Maya. And then the next morning, all you can do is just neutralize the effects of the previous day's work. You see? That it's an unfortunate thing. This is a particular problem for the householder. So it's a relevant thing. But Krishna says, when we make the determination to live according to the examples that we see in the Bhagavatam, and when we structure our society according to the social examples that we see in the Bhagavatam or in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, all the Bhakti Shastras, then we at least take a step towards this prasadam, this situation of purity of mind. Because when the association is pure, the mind is naturally pure. Everything in the mind is what? Where were we? I think it was it here or was it in Folsom that we said it's like khichdi? Folsom, yeah. Khichdi means you throw everything in the pot, you stir it up, and it comes out a big mush, but it's easy to digest and it's tasty. Prabhupada said, poor man's feast, khichdi. So the mind is like that. It's the repository of so many impressions from how many billions of eons nobody can guess. When you were an aardvark, all the experiences you had in your aardvark body, they're still there in the mind. When you were Manu, you may have been Manu at one time. Do you know this? These children are creating a disturbance. The pink one and the purple one. So that there's no mistake. In the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, there's a passage there in which the text says that the Rishi Vamadev, he once had a stunning epiphany. Vamadev. Anybody heard this name? Vamadev, the Rishi. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, he once had a stunning realization. He thought, my God, now I can see that at one point I was the sun. Do you remember when you were the sun? At one time I was Manu. Do you remember that? Do you remember when you were an aardvark? When you were a serial killer? When you were the Acharya? We've all been in so many births. Each one of them we've collected so many experiences, and that is called samskarana. Pratama samskarana, dvitiya samskarana, tritiya samskarana. When we print books, it's called samskarana. Imprint. It leaves its trace on the mind. And this mind is the repository of so many impressions from eons past, countless births even. So this is where all these crazy thoughts and desires and delusions, it all comes from this. Therefore, just imagine the level of determination that is required to stick to these principles. It is said, if you follow the regulative principles very strictly of Varnashram Dharma, consecutively for 100 births, what happens? You take birth as Brahma. Brahma is the supreme engineer of this universe. Many of you are engineers. So Brahma, you really can't understand the level of his technology. You look around and see. You go to some place like Muir Woods, and you can just appreciate the genius. Even you take a look at San Francisco and just conceive of how that city was put together. And consider the person who designed the brains of the computers that put that city together. I mean the organic, evolving computers, human computers. Anyway, I don't want to get too far afield here, but Krishna says when we are pious, then we overcome all this dvandva moha, we're fixed in punya, and then we can approach this principle. Because this is what Krishna is hinting at when he says, Tasmat chastram pramanam te karya vijanataha. Discriminate what to do and what not to do by what the Shastra tells you. And the Shastra does tell you. So you have to look that up. You have to find out. One of my godbrothers, Ritadvaja Swami, he came to assist Tamal Krishna Goswami because at one point Tamal Krishna Goswami had to go for prostate operation. And it was a very difficult surgery, so he had a hard time recuperating. It's good to have some support when things are going bad. So he came and he was there in his quarters, and he said he was astonished because every single day the phone is ringing off the hook with somebody calling from halfway around the world. You know, we've got a situation here in Mumbai. What was Prabhupada's policy on such and such? Or someone in Nairobi would call up and say, what would Prabhupada do in this or that circumstance? What did Prabhupada, New York City, what did Prabhupada say about this person? What is our position on that issue? All day long, these are the kinds of questions that only Tamal Krishna Goswami knew how to answer, because Srila Prabhupada trained him up directly. I don't know where it was, somewhere on this tour in North America within the last month or two. I was sharing how another godbrother said, to be with him for half an hour is similar to sitting in a room and reading Srimad Bhagavatam for 3 months straight. It's express lane to have this Vaishnava Sangha. You see? But anyway, most of us cannot have that, or most of us are not wise enough to take that somehow or other. So the Shastra enjoins for the general course of activities is that everybody should regulate their activities according to what the Shastra says. When we do that, then it comes to this point here, today's verse. Although our senses are wandering around, why do we call the senses go? What does go mean? Senses? Cows. Once I was in Nathdwara. Raise your hand if you've been to Nathdwara, Rajasthan, Srinathji. So a godbrother and I, we had bought a big basket, this big. You can get Mahaprasadam. And there's a small courtyard with little chairs and tables. You can sit down and honor your prasadam happily. So we were sitting there one day and we were taking prasadam, but we were not very attentive to the external environment. We were attentive to the prasadam. Because prasade sarva dukhanam hanir. So suddenly the table exploded and the prasadam flew everywhere and we didn't know what hit us. And then we got up and we looked and we saw that there was a cow with her face pressed into the plate, consuming everything as quickly as possible. This is what it means to be a cow. Therefore the senses are called go. The cow cannot stop eating. That's why we restrict the calves. People don't know this. If we live in San Jose or New York City or even Mumbai, I think, to some extent. You have to restrict the calves at a certain time of day because otherwise they'll go and drink all the milk. All of it. They don't stop. Our senses are like that. So unless we restrict them, they'll just keep going 24/7 until we eat up the universe. That's how less than 5% of the world's population has consumed over 50% of the resources. Here, folks. Here. It's us. We're doing it. Just so there's no mistake. Just like, I said, the purple one and the pink one. So, you and I, our lifestyle is doing this. This is a problem. That's why half the world wants to kill us right now and is planning round the clock how to erase our religion, the best part of us, but also our economic system, our society, our military-industrial complex. There's a reason for it. Anyway, so here Krishna is telling us that if we just accept this principle, yan mano anuvidhiyate, again the word is here used again, vidhi. If we regulate our lives, then we become, we can overcome this situation. I think I got ahead of myself here. 64, 65. Raga dvesha vimuktaistu vishayan indriyaihi charan. This is the point. Just like we say go charan. So here it said indriyayi charan. The same thing. And atmavashir vidhyatma prasadam adhigachati. So what is that prasadam? Vimalamana. The mind becomes purified. I was mentioning the mind is like a khichdi. It's like a repository of so many crazy impressions. You have an idea of what is the condition of your mind by looking at what you dream about at night. What do you dream about at night? Think. How many people dreamt about Krishna last night? Not a single hand goes up. How many people have completely cohesive dreams every night? They make sense, it's in perfect order, everything is... they're crazy. This is the thing. So if we live on the mental platform, this is our life. It's not Vidhyatma life, and it's not prasadam. But when we are in, the Christians have a nice name for this actually. Prasadam, for them, they would translate as state of grace. You're living in a state of grace, they say. And that's kind of what Krishna says here. It's really, you can translate it literally in that way. Prasade, being in a state of grace, sarva dukhanam hani. It affects the destruction of all your miseries. Why? Because for whom will it do this? Prasanna chetasaha. Srila, I think it is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, this harks back into the first canto, chapter 2. Anybody know this word, prasanna? From that chapter 2 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. You all know this chapter, I know that. What is the verse? Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha. By practicing bhakti yoga, we become prasanna manasa. And this is exactly the consciousness that Krishna is referring to here. Therefore, he uses the same word. Prasanna chetas and prasanna manas, same thing. No difference. Hi ashu, it's very quickly, buddhi paryavatishtate. Your intelligence is fixed. You remember a few verses ago we read that we may be fasting, but even though we're fasting, we still have a taste for all the things that we normally eat. Is it not? How many people fast sometimes? The other day was Ekadashi. Did you fast? And many people are also fasting for Purushottama Mas. So you don't lose your taste for the things that you like to eat just because you're fasting. The taste remains. That's what Krishna is talking about. So he says, you may have that taste. What is the verse? Rasa Varjam? Vishayavina vartante niraharasya. Nirahari is the person who's fasting. So niraharasya dehinaha, and he's inside of a body that wants to eat. So if we're identified with that body full of desire to eat, and we're fasting, then the mind gets more agitated, but the body gets weak. You see? So we have to figure out a way how to deal with this problem. And Krishna says, Rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. You can prevail over the situation if you have seen something higher, seen some higher taste. And that's what he's getting at in this verse. It doesn't come easily. There's no opulence manifest even in this world that doesn't have a long history of tapasya behind it. Even in this world, you don't get anything of real value unless you work for it. We were discussing this the other night. Sharira yatra pichatena prasadhyera karmanaha. Without doing something, you can't even pay your bills. You can't even feed yourself. So what to speak if you want something super excellent? So the intelligence will be fixed when the mind is pure and not before that point. So how do we purify the mind? We follow these regular principles gradually. That will help. But I mentioned, there's an express route. What is that express route? HOV lane. Sadhu Sangha. Why? What happens in Sadhu Sangha? Adau Shraddha, you invest your faith in Sadhu Sangha. Atha Bhajana Kriya. In the Sadhu Sangha, you automatically, what are you going to do? You're going to do Kirtan. Here's Sadhu Sangha is available. So what happens when you come here? You see the deity, you perform Kirtan, you're hearing about Krishna, and then later, Prasade sarva dukhanam hanirasyophajayate. You see? So this is the idea. Especially in this day and age, the main thing is that we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But in order to do that, we have to have heard that this is a worthwhile endeavor. And we have to think about people who have not heard that yet. And we have to give them the books that explain to them how they can do it. That's why I'm sitting here today giving you this lecture. Because somebody took the time to give me a book. I came in contact with Srila Prabhupada first through his books. Most of us did. Those books are powerful. But do not underestimate, there are three things Prabhupada used to emphasize. One is Harinam Sankirtana. We were discussing before, devotees used to go out 9 hours a day, Harinam Sankirtan, from 9 in the morning till 7 or 8 at night. Harinam Sankirtan. Even here in the Bay Area, this was going on in the 1970s. And book distribution. When I was on the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtana party, they used to give me a bag of halwa if I was lucky. If it was a bad day, I would get khichdi. And they would drop me off at some spot at 7 a.m., whether it was 30 degrees outside or 99 degrees outside. And I had to stay out there all day long, and they would come back and pick me up at 7 o'clock at night. And I had to distribute Prabhupada's books. This is called, what is it? Brahmacharjena, what is it? Tapasa Brahmacharjena, Shamena Chatamena Cha. That was when I was a brahmachari. I was a young boy. I think I couldn't do it now. But that's why it's important to mold our youngsters while they're like a blank slate, Prabhupada said. If you give them austerity and call it play, they will take it in that way. They will take that as play. They will not be spoiled in their character. Otherwise, you let them run wild and associate with all the other monsters all around them, then of course they're going to become monsters. What do you expect? That's the nature of the society. Anyway, so prasadam is another one. We have Harinam Sankirtan, we have book distribution. That's what I was doing on Radha Damodar. You're all still doing this, but the magnitude is nothing like it was. I have to say honestly, it's just not like it used to be. I got frostbite in the winter of 1976 because I was doing that. It was 13 below zero in Cincinnati, Ohio. And snow was falling, and we were out on the parking lots trying to approach people with Prabhupada's books. So one person was trying to make his way. Anybody who's lived in the East, you're all from India, so I don't know, but if you've lived on the East Coast, you know what snow is. When snow melts, then it turns into slush. And then the next night when it gets cold again, that slush freezes again, and the next morning you've got gray ice everywhere. It's like wet, gray glass. And it's very, very difficult to drive on that. So the people would be driving around in their car, they're trying to get the windshield wipers to get the snow away, and it's hard to do that even. Anyway, so once I went in, sometimes we would go and try to get people's attention. And I saw that at one point I was pointing at a book, and the man's wife was sitting next to him in the car and said, "Harry, don't open the door, he's crazy." Because they couldn't imagine that anybody who wasn't crazy would be out there in that kind of weather, especially trying to do something for them. How often do you see that? So anyway, I don't want to get too far off topic here. Harinam Sankirtan is very, very potent. Book distribution, you know very well, is Prabhupada's heart and soul, the most effective, Brihat Mridanga. You can hear this Harinam Kirtan only a few blocks. But this Brihat Mridanga, it goes all over the world. And another thing that I've seen personally, very, very powerful, is the subject of tonight's lecture, prasadam. I'll give you two examples. When I was in Dallas, Texas in the 1980s, they opened up a restaurant called Kalachanji's. That restaurant regularly receives the prize, from Vegetarian Times, mainstream, probably the most prominent publication for vegetarians in North America. It always gets high marks. It's a very, very highly rated restaurant, very popular for many years. It started off on the right note, and it has kept going ever since. Very stable operation there. Successful restaurant. In the beginning, I had some doubts about the restaurant because I saw that people are coming in. The structure of that restaurant is that you come through the front door of the temple, and you have to make a choice. If you go straight, you go out the back door of the temple. If you turn right, you go into the temple room itself, and if you turn left, you go into the restaurant. So I used to sit there in the lobby, and I would see people invariably, they come in, they look around, they turn left. They go into the restaurant, they take prasadam, they don't care to look at the books that are on the table for them to peruse while they're eating, they pay for their meal, they don't stop in the gift shop, they leave the building. For years, this is going on. They never have any interest. They don't want to talk to anybody. They're just not interested. And I saw, this was maybe, like I said, in the early 80s, the restaurant was opened. In the 1990s, I came back and found many of the same customers that I could recognize because they would come every day, some of them. Virtually every day they would come. They're still coming. 10 years later, they're going into the temple, they turn left, they eat their prasadam, they pay, they go home. In 2000, or early maybe like 2005 or 6, I went there again, and I was thinking, what is the point? How are they going to make any advancement? They're just coming and eating, they don't want to hear anything, they're not taking any books. What's going to happen? In 2005, I went back and I saw the same people. Many of them are still coming. They're still taking prasadam. But this time I saw at least one of them was sitting in the temple room because it's a very serene atmosphere in the Dallas temple. And this person was you see them sometimes like this. They're enjoying the peace like they do sometimes in temples. So I thought, okay, whatever. Then I came back again in 2009. And this time I saw, my God, what's happened? The person who's offering arati is one of those customers from the restaurant. Then they told me that another one of those customers is the temple treasurer. 2 more girls that I recognize that used to come together every day, they're going out on Harinam Sankirtana. This is the power of prasadam. It works. It may take some time. But when you reach a critical mass, as they say, then boom, it explodes. Any biologists here? I'd like to give this example also. They have this, in biology, they have this J-curve of biological growth, when you've got an organism that multiplies at a very high rate. It may look for a long time like it's doing nothing, but because it's doubling, think about it. 4 times 4 is 8, right? 16, then 32, 64, right? So many things. Anyway, when it grows, it really shoots up. This is the point. When you reach this critical mass, when you become punyatma, this is what happens. The second example I'll give you is my own mother. I was living at Govardhan Hill with no plan to do anything else. And one year I went to visit my mother. I had planned to stay for 2 weeks. I ended up staying 7 years. What happened? When I went there, she had a massive stroke and heart attack at the same time that nearly killed her. And the doctor said, she's got a few days to live. How could I leave? I had to stay with her. But then when she came out, nobody was there for her in the hospital. I had to sit with her every day for the better part of a year while she recuperated. Then when she finally was released from the hospital, she was invalid. Somebody has to take care of her. I'm the youngest son. So I was living out of a suitcase for 7 years. But every day I was cooking for my mother and offering to Krishna and then giving her prasadam. And at some point her memory was gone, so she couldn't remember more than maybe 3 days, 3 or 4 days. That was the span of her recollection, short-term memory. And so I used to take her to the temple every week, and every week she had a new experience because she didn't remember the previous week. She would meet everybody all over again. They all knew her, but she didn't know them. But she liked it. And she was attracted to the kirtan. She liked to hear the lectures, even though her hearing was also going at a certain point. And she told me in the last year of her life, she said, you know what? She said, I just realized that now I'm actually more attached to all the things that you're cooking for me than anything that I ever used to eat. What does that mean? That means that her subtle body had been purified, and means that she wanted prasadam, which means that in her next life she's going to take birth where she can get prasadam. Prasade sarva dukhanam hanirasyopa. You see? So prasadam is not something that should be underestimated. Mahaprasada govinde nama Brahmani Vaishnave, Salpa Punyavatam. Swalpa Punyavatam. For those who have very meager pious credits, they don't have faith in these things. Oh, Harinam Sankirtan, old-fashioned bhajan nonsense. We've got high-paying job in Silicon Valley. We don't need this. You see? These are the people with the Salpa Punyavats. These are the people with very little piety. They don't have so much regard for Mahaprasadam. So Srila Prabhupada used to emphasize especially this Harinama Sankirtana, this transcendental book distribution, especially Bhagavat Gita as it is, and Mahaprasadam distribution. They're very, very powerful. Even I think here you had your Steve Jobs, right? He was appreciative in his youth. He was fed by the Hare Krishna temple. He never forgot it. He never forgot it. So it has massive effect. So there are a few more things we can say, but prasadam here means prasadam adhigachati. He is able to attain a state of grace. That's one definition of it. He's living in a state of blessings, that he's able to control his senses by divine grace. Without mercy, you cannot do anything. If you can wake up in the morning and remember how to tie your shoes, it's mercy. Think about it. Hrishikesha. There's actually a verse like that in the Smriti Shastra. What is it? Pratah prabodhito Vishno Hrishikeshena yatvaya yad karyasi shana tat karomi. I forget now. But anyway, the idea is that, thank you for waking me up, Hrishikesha. Because without the mercy of Hrishikesha, the person who actually owns and controls your senses, you won't even hear your alarm clock. Even if you get one of those big ringing ones, you won't hear it. Who makes your senses work? This is the subject matter of the Kena Upanishad. By whom are these senses invested with the potency to perceive? It's a miracle. It's God's grace. So, prasadam means that. We get mercy in order to follow these principles. By following these principles, our mind becomes pure. When our mind is pure, then we can enjoy. All of our suffering is mitigated. That's called prasadam. And at the end, now it's the end of the lecture, then we take prasadam. Anybody have any questions or comments on any of this?
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu. You mentioned that when the mind becomes purified, then the intelligence becomes situated.
Fixed.
So I was thinking, is it also that to control the mind, one has to fix their intelligence? Does it go both ways, or
Yeah.
it seems like another side is without really training the intelligence, there's no hope of controlling the mind.
That's true. Because it's by our intelligence, by force of the intelligence, we make the decision. I'm going to follow these principles. I'm going to chant my rounds. The mind is telling us, no, don't chant your rounds. You're tired. This is just not necessary. Don't worry about it. Chill out. But the intelligence says, well, no, it doesn't work like that. I'm not going to do Y, I'm going to do X. And I'm sorry, but that's the way it's going to be. You see? Yeah, so you're right. Even to control the mind, the intelligence becomes, natural. It becomes pariyavatishyate means it becomes you become naturally based in intelligence rather than the mental platform by using your whatever little intelligence you have to follow the orders of the spiritual master. When we do that, then we get grace. Yasya prasadat Bhagavat prasado. Yasya prasadam nagati kutopi. Is that clear? Anything else?
Prabhuji, you mentioned the verse Isham Twantagatam Papam. On one hand, it seems that unless one is cleansed of all the sins or sinful tendencies, one cannot worship Krishna. But there are also verses like Aho Batasva Vachato Gariyan. So how can we adjust these two verses? Is a person who can't overcome a sin hopeless case for pursuing spiritual path?
That person will be very slow in making advancement. It's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that if we are offenders to the holy name of Krishna, he may not kick us away, or he might. You don't know. But at any rate, we can go on with that level of devotional service for many, 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 many births, if that's what we want. This is love. He doesn't have to accept you on Facebook as his friend, just like we, later. It works like that. And if that's the kind of relationship that we would like to have, if our activities demonstrate that to Krishna, actions speak louder than words. He's not a fool. He can understand what's happening, and he will reciprocate in kind. If that's your study, you're happy with that level of devotion, then keep on with it. But don't blame me when you go into Ketu and everything goes awry. You see? That's Bhagavat Gita. If you think about it, Krishna doesn't shove it down our throats. He says, Yatechasi tata kuru. I've explained everything to you, Arjun. Now you make a choice. Like a good parent, But understand one thing. Maya tyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. This Maya is working under my control. And if you don't surrender unto me, then Maya's going to be in charge of your life, and she's a hard taskmaster. Is that okay? Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Very nice class. My question is, you were mentioning about the children. Said how we control, as a parent, we give them as much Krishna consciousness as possible. What is it that, they will be getting exposed to things that are outside too. So, and we understand that the mind is like very flickery and it'll run out everywhere. What is it that as a parent that we can do that, will help them in their Krishna consciousness?
Well, what I'm seeing all over the country now among parents is that they engage their children. Because we live in a society wherein you have to keep your children engaged. Because if you don't engage your children, somebody else will engage your children. And they may engage your children in things that you don't want your children engaged in. So we engage them, but also we have to create a social infrastructure that is supportive of Krishna consciousness. And this is something that Srila Prabhupada emphasized again and again and again and again and again, especially in his later years. A very strong part of that is to have a community of like-minded devotees who have children that are the age of our children and who can play with them like that. It's the best thing that we can do. Even then, it's going to require some stratification. At one point, I was a Gurukula teacher. I have experience that I was teaching Sanskrit to children, and they would learn very well while they were in my care, and as soon as they went home for the vacation, their parents filled them with television and amusement parks and candy and all sorts of nonsense, and when they came back, I had to start all over again. You see? So to have a supportive society is a very, very important part of creating the fertile ground in which to plant the seed of bhakti. It's about association, and that association has to be among the householders. It's not enough that everybody gets inspired by the sannyasis who come or by the senior devotees. I mean, we have to do this ourselves. I'm seeing good signs in the younger generation of parents especially. They're taking responsibility, and they're taking this into their own hands, and they've got vision, and they've got wherewithal, and as long as they're working under the directions of their bona fide spiritual masters, then that would be a very positive thing. We'll see what the future holds, but there are promising signs.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you. I like this phrase that Prabhupada has here, to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can
Famous phrase in ISKCON.
Yeah. Can you speak a little on that?
Well, it's not something that Srila Prabhupada really explicates in his purport, is it? It's just something kind of implicit. But generally the way I've understood this, and I think the way that Prabhupada meant it, given that he's given this in the synonyms as well as its translation, when we follow regulative principles, then we become purified in mind. Only when we become purified mentally can we actually become freed from the bashing of just the repeated lashes of the material energy that you had. Badrinath Ayan Maharaj gives a very nice analogy. He says it's like a football. We feel that we're sailing sky high and the sky's the limit and there's no problem, but then we hit the ground and we get kicked back to the other goalpost. We just get kicked back and forth. We're like a football. We have no say in our material existence. Sometimes we're doing great, and when that happens, we become stupid and giddy and complacent, and we feel this is me, and it's going to go on forever, and I've got nothing to worry about, and I don't have time, no thank you. You see? And when we're sunk in the depths of despair and have no assets and have no allies and have no health and have no self-esteem and have nothing to take shelter of within this world, then we cry out to God. So if we're pious, and if we're not pious, then we blame God. Or as I said earlier, more likely we blame his devotees, because to blame God directly is too obvious. You see? So regulative principles of freedom mean that if we finally get sick of being kicked back and forth like that, the swinging pendulum syndrome, then we start to think about ultimacy, and we start to think about the process. Last night in Folsom, somebody asked me a very intelligent question. She said, if we don't remember the past sinful activities for which we're suffering right now, then how do we learn anything from it? How do we get any benefit out of it? So there may be many ways to answer that question, but the way that what I emphasized, and it's relevant to this question as well, is that all we really have to understand is the process. And we have to understand the magnitude that that process entails, the magnitude of suffering that that process entails. Think about the most heinous, evil things that you've ever heard of happening in this material world. And just consider that those things were allowed to happen. And think about, the best things that happen in this world. And how intoxicated we become when they happen. When we understand that as long as we are invested in the process of material life, we're going to experience both of those. It's just a matter of time. Then we begin to get a glimpse of what it means to follow regulative, why we call these regulative principles of freedom. In an immediate sense, it seems that our freedom is restricted. I want to go to the movies, and these Hare Krishna people say, no. I want to eat anything and everything, and they say, no. No, 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 no. Don't be so negative, man. See? So it doesn't seem to be like freedom, but somebody who's able to think deeply and understands the process of our incarceration in this material world and how the laws of nature are working, and somebody with some, I want to say, sagacity, enough to see that, we're being kicked back and forth like a football. It's just a question of time. Then that person begins to consider, what does real freedom mean? So it's a little bit of a deep thing. It's not something that any fool in the mode of ignorance can really access very easily. Therefore, prasadam. You give that person prasadam, that's another speed, HOV lane. You give that person a book, you give that person the holy name. Sadhyasavanaya kalpate. He was quoting this verse. Actually, Jiva Goswami mentions, he explains in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in his commentary on that book. When we say that a person immediately becomes purified just by chanting the holy name, often we see that even devotees suffer very badly. A friend of ours just died of cancer night before last in London. So devotees are also suffering, so how do we become free immediately? The answer, Jiva Goswami says, it's like, he says if you take 100 palm leaves, stack them in a big stack, and push a needle through them, does the needle go through immediately? Yes? Who says yes? Raise your hand. Nobody. Who says no? Raise your hand. Nobody. That's what I thought. The answer is both yes and no. You can say that the process is immediate. I've immediately pierced a stack of leaves, no problem. But actually it's not immediate because the needle goes through one leaf, then the next leaf, then the next leaf, then the next leaf, then the next leaf. In the same way, when we take initiation into Krishna consciousness, when we begin to follow this process, when we follow these 4 regulative principles in particular, when we chant 16 rounds, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Immediately means we have initiated the process, but depending on Krishna's will, depending on our own desire, depending on the level of our karma, it may take a little time. But you will become free. This is the point. You just stay in the boat, you will become free. Therefore, we call it regular principles of freedom. Does that make sense? Is it satisfactory? Okay. Anything else? Yes, please.
Srila Prabhupada also gave another example that when you take the initiation of an acharya, then it's like pulling the plug on the fan, and the fan doesn't stop. And yes, you'll still get reactions, but the fan is starting to slow down. Yeah. So, and then Satyaraj did write a book on the regulative principles of freedom, which is really a beautiful book.
Yeah, I think this is one of those phrases. Srila Prabhupada said that he wrote these books very carefully, and he very carefully chose each word. I think this is a case in point. It seems he was very deliberate about the way that he expressed this, because it's not really explicit even in the Sanskrit. There's no mention of freedom here anywhere. But he does say this, and quite intentionally. Anything else? Okay. Microphone all the way in the front.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for a wonderful class. You mentioned that as long as we are invested, into the mental platform, then we are like this football being kicked. And Krishna also mentions Matra Sparsastu Kaunteya Sitoshna Sukha Dukkada, that there will be reversals. So if you are not invested and still the reversals come, how does such a person take that? Does he take this as lessons?
This is a very good question. It's one that Baladev Vidabhushan explains in his commentary to the previous text, which is the basis of Prabhupada's own purport, that I'll read again. It's already explained that one may externally control the senses by some artificial process, but unless the senses are engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there's every chance of a fall. Although the person in full Krishna consciousness may apparently be on the sensual plane, because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment and detachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable, and if Krishna doesn't want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control, because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform. I mean, raise your hand if you're not attached to your senses. How many people... Yeah, not attached. Okay. How many people are not planning to eat again, ever? Anyone, raise your hand if you're never again going to sleep. You see what I mean? So, but when we regulate these activities according to the Shastra Vithi, then that will elevate us, because it pleases Krishna. It's a step in the right direction. And especially when we dedicate those regulated activities to Krishna in his service exclusively, then we advance very quickly. And then we get this prasadam, we get this state of grace. And at that point, because our minds are purified and also satisfied, prasanna manasa, then we're not attracted anymore. It's a beautiful process. Is that answering your question? It's okay? Okay. Yes, again, Kankan Devi.
When he was asking that question, I was thinking about Queen Kunti, and maybe you can elaborate on that, how she, so much suffering existed for the Pandavas and for Queen Kunti.
Lifelong suffering.
But then she prayed because it helped them to be near Krishna more.
Yeah, that's why I said, when we're sailing through the sky and everything is, 70 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, and, everybody's looking up at us and clapping, and, then there's really very little impetus to call out sincerely to the Lord. But when we're completely sunk in misery and no hope of any deliverance, then we get desperate. Sometimes we have the saying in English, there are no atheists in foxholes. It's well documented in wartime when men are in combat. Nowadays they even send women into combat as well because they're liberated. This is how Prabhupada said that the women's liberation means you can exploit the women. I mean, Americans are they're past masters at this art of deception. It's called perception management. perception management. Or in psychology, they call it behavioral modification. But we know American ingenuity has helped them to realize that the best way to control a population is to convince that population that it has freedom, when in fact you're pulling all the strings behind the scenes. You see? Anyway, that's another point. But when they're in combat, they scream out for their mothers. That's very primal. We're not even in touch enough with our subtle body to understand what that must be like. To lose all false ego and just cry like a baby. You see? But Prabhupada said this is how we should be chanting this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Just like a baby cries for the mother. That is at a very, very deep level that is usually subconscious. And these kirtan melas that we go to and these sadhu sangha retreats and japa retreats, they're actually meant to bring about that mode of consciousness. There are many ways to do it. There's no one way to become Krishna conscious. In fact, every individual has a unique way to become Krishna conscious. But that doesn't mean that we don't all follow the same principles, according to the same process, and go through the same stages with the same direction and the same parampara, etc. Is that okay? Answering the question. Anything else? Internet question.
This is from Gandharvika Mataji, who is watching from internet. And she says, Dandavats Prabhu, your mere presence reminds us of Vrindavan. What to speak of having the fortune of hearing from you? Could you please explain how it is possible to practice gratitude to our loved ones like how you served your mother? Mm-hmm. Sometimes, even in service, our material mind thinks it is not a waste of time. Can you please ask okay. Even if they leave, either they leave parent at old age home or hired servant. We hardly see anyone showing gratitude these days. How do we imbibe real gratitude in practice?
Read Srimad Bhagavatam in the 4th canto. Understand the concluding verse of Prithu Maharaja's prayers to when they were glorifying Prithu Maharaj, how he responded. He says, 4 things we have to have. Have I said this here? I don't remember. The first thing is gunayanam. You have to be invested with Brahminical qualities through good association, through following these principles like we've been discussing throughout the class. The next thing is gunayanam. Shiladhanam. Gunayanam Shiladhanam. Your real wealth has to be character. Janaka Pandit says, if you lose money, that's not a big problem because you can always make money back. If you lose your health, that's a problem. But you can also gain your health back if you're careful. If you lose your character, it's finished. You cannot do anything after that point. Once you're spoiled, it's like china. You can glue it back together, but it's never the same. This is especially important in today's society. So one whose character has become his wealth, that's his chief concern, so to speak, and kritagnyam, who has gratitude. For kritagnya, what does it mean? Kritagnya, I know what has been done for me. Krita means done, past passive participle. Gnya means I'm aware of it. Kritagnya actually means to be aware of what others have done for you. So Prithu Maharaj says to have Brahminical qualities, to be concerned chiefly about preserving or developing your character, to be grateful to others who have given you so much. Does everybody know what are the 5 Panch Mahayajnas? We don't do them anymore because we're a Vikarmi society. But actually a civilized human society everybody should be offering sacrifices to the forefathers, to the great sages, to the demigods, 5 different ways. This is gratitude. It's not necessary for a devotee, but a devotee is grateful, and we should at least be aware. Krita Gya. We are gaining so much from those who have gone before us. Therefore, Vriddhashlayam is the 4th thing that he mentions. Vriddhashlayam, having taken shelter of Vriddhas. In the Smriti Shastra, it's described that there's no sabha. Sabha means a royal assembly in which ministers give advice to a king. It's not a real sabha unless there are Vriddhas there. You cannot have a council of learned advisors unless they are old. They must be old. This is the thing. And when one takes shelter of these elders, then that person automatically, he gets all the good qualities, he becomes kritagnya, he becomes shiladhana, ityadi. So these 4 things Prithu Maharaj says. If you have these 4 qualifications, then what happens? Vriddhashrayam samvranate nu sampadaha. Sampada, Lakshmi Devi herself will select you. Samvranate. Samvranate means just like we have Swayamvara. A royal princess would choose, I want to marry this one. She herself would select. Right? So, Lakshmi Devi will select us for giving her blessings when we have these 4 qualifications. We are invested with good qualities through devotional service. We are conscious of what others have done for us and how we depend on others, how much. We have, as our sole concern, or at least our main concern, to preserve and develop and refine our character, and we take shelter of elders. If we do these things, then Lakshmi herself will come to us. He says like that. So that's my quick answer to that question. Is that okay? Anything else? Yes.
Dandavats Prabhu, about this point of gratefulness which you mentioned, particularly to the aged people, parents and all. I was just thinking...
Matri Devo Bhava, Atiti Devo Bhava, Pitri Devo Bhava, ityadi. This is Taittiriya Upanishad. Shruti mantras. It's very clear. You cannot argue with it. They're to be treated like gods. Gurus also.
But there is this other verse also, and I think you briefly touched upon it when you said that it's not necessary for devotees, where actually I think it's Madhavendra Puri's verse, he says that I am not indebted to anybody. Actually, if a person is engaged in devotional service, he doesn't have any other duties for...
If he doesn't have any other concerns.
Sorry, bro?
If he is engaged in devotional service without any other concerns. If he is exclusively engaged in devotional service. In other words, if he's a pure devotee. Yastu atmarati reva syat, ityadi, as in chapter 3. Do you know the verse I'm referring to? Yeah. Okay. So?
Yeah, that kind of answers. So, obviously I'm not in that pure devotional state, so it doesn't apply to me. Yeah, thank you.
He says, Atman yeva cha santushtas tasya karyam navidyate. One who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him, there's no duty. That person is very rare, of course. The rest of us, we should do these things. And actually, if we read Bhagavatam carefully, we'll see that these great devotees that we are meant to emulate, they are doing these things. Prachina Barhishat is one example. There are many others. I gave the example the other day. Rukmini Rani, when she was going to the temple, praying that Krishna would come and kidnap her, whose temple was she going to? Durga Devi. So devotees even worship demigods in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But that's not something that the initiated members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness should, that's not the example that Prabhupada wanted us to set, even though in principle it's there.
Go ahead. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, you just mentioned about like respecting the elders and treating parents as God. But when we are in a society where the elders sometimes are not favorable to what we are doing, like practicing Krishna consciousness, how do we maintain the balance actually?
You said it. It's a balance, and you have to take shelter of other elders who can give you the guidance of how to do that. But you have to do that. You have to please them. You have to respect them. You have to serve them, and you have to get their mercy. That's what it means. It's maybe bad karma, but we have to do that. It wasn't easy for me. It nearly killed me. But that's the injunction. Nanda Maharaj also says this in the 10th canto. If a person gives up out of fear or out of laziness or out of desire or whimsicalness, that person is finished.
Regarding showing gratitude to especially demigods, here in ISKCON society, because of what we hear, we don't have to worship demigods. The message, because of the messages we hear, it kind of makes our heart hard-hearted with respect to showing some gratitude for demigods. Is that?
I don't know that I would ascribe causality to the instruction. I would say that's our anartha, that we become hard-hearted. The instruction is a neutral instruction. We should give respects to everyone, but that, or we should exclusively depend on Krishna, but there's nothing in that instruction that should make anyone hard-hearted.
No, it's not just showing respect, it's actually having gratitude because of supplying us lots of things. It's just more than giving
Well,
respect.
it's kind of like this, if someone is hosting me here in San Jose and housing me and feeding me and driving me to and from the temple and other programs and putting himself out for me, and then I just, it's nothing that you're doing, it's just, it's Krishna. How does that person feel? So this is called etiquette. I mean, it's a fact that Krishna is doing everything, but, some people are representing Krishna. That's what we respect. We show respect to the seat.
So we have to show gratitude.
We have to show respect. Yatha yatha. Shakale shamman korite shakti dehonatha jatha jatha. Each person according to his own station should be shown respect.
Yeah, but sometimes showing
and this is a
respect
crucial
could be,
necessity. It's a
sometimes-
crucial necessity. Crucial.
Yes, but please listen to the follow-on question. Sometimes showing respect could be, especially for demigods, because they're supplying so many. Showing respect could be offering them some prayers and doing some things for them. And it's not that we worship Krishna, then we don't have to do those things. How does it?
I'm not sure I follow your question.
So demigods are supplying lots of things for us, and to show gratitude to them. Showing gratitude to them could mean we may have to do something for them in return. And if we just say that we worship Krishna and we don't have to do anything for the demigods, that's not really, that gets into your example you gave.
Well, is this the Bhagavatam's idea or is this your idea? Because the Srimad Bhagavatam says, Yathat taror mulana shechanena tripyati tat skanda pujopashakha. When you water the root of the tree, there's no need to water the leaves and branches. But we definitely show respect, but that doesn't necessarily entail offering prayers to the demigods, because sometimes the prayers are not accurate. They're written by persons who are not self-realized.
That's my question. My question is that how are we going to show gratitude to the demigods?
By surrendering to Krishna. When you sail past the Hanuman temple in your rickshaw, you say, Radhe Radhe Hanuman. Did I tell that story here? I don't remember. This is Vrindavan consciousness. Everything is focused on Krishna, 100%. They have all respect for everyone else, but there's no question of anything getting in the way of Krishna. You see, with us, that's a danger, and that's why we don't encourage it so much. We're not opposed to showing respect. We're encouraged to show respect. It's a vital necessity, I said 3 times. But we want to keep Krishna in the center. And the demigods actually become very happy when they see that we are surrendering to Krishna. That is the best way to satisfy the demigods. I was recently in Tiruchendur in South India, and there's a Skanda temple there. He's the god of war. And we were talking about this point that, you know, how does one deal with this? Eventually, in some settings, we were doing so many programs, and the question would come up. Nobody would ask it, you know, explicitly because it was too sensitive. But one child, you know, as children often do, they said, "Well, if Krishna is the supreme, then why are we worshiping Skanda?" So, you know, it's a little touchy sometimes. We have to show all respects, but we should not become bewildered about what is the Siddhanta. Sambandha Gyan should be maintained. And Sambandha Gyan, as I said the other day, it means to understand what are the relationships, not only between ourselves and Krishna, but between ourselves and each other. And that includes the demigods. They're also parts and parcels of Krishna. Ekala Ishwara Krishna Arsha Bhritya. This is the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The demigods are very happy, really, only with the persons who surrender to Krishna because they're in the same department. They're trying to push the same program. They're, in some cases, they may be less advanced than the devotees. Even the devotees in our society may be more advanced than some demigods. Does that sound like blasphemy? If it does, then your faith is in trouble. Because pure devotion is pure devotion. And some demigods are pure, and some humans are also pure. But anybody who has pure devotion, that is the Vaishnava. Some demigods, they get into trouble a lot. Or they don't remain demigods. They fall down further than, they lose the opportunity that demigod birth would have given them. Actually, it's stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that demigods are waiting in line in Kali Yuga to take birth here in Bharatvarsha, because here they know in one lifetime, if you're chanting and hearing about Krishna, you can finish this whole business and go back to Godhead. And they hardly have that opportunity. I mean, when you're surrounded by apsaras and people glorifying you in Vedic prayers, and I mean, it's a pretty heady experience, I would think. It's very, very hard for them to really take shelter in the same way that she was mentioning that Kunti does. Therefore, it's a fortunate thing to actually be here in Martyaloka. To be in Patala Loka also, it's not possible. They're just submerged in hell. All they can do is maybe scream for help when they get a little sense. But, sometimes even their good sense is covered over. Human life is a very, very rare opportunity where we have the perfect combination. We can see all the angles and move forward if we choose. And we should not get distracted. Just before this passage started is when Krishna said, when your intelligence has passed through the dense darkness of the dense forest of delusion, you'll become indifferent. Shruti vipratipannate. You'll become indifferent to all these flowery things that are mentioned in the sukta or that, mantra pushpa or whatever, This is the idea. Is that answering your question? If it's not answering your question, then reformulate it.
You asked me, so I will do it again.
Sorry?
You asked me.
Okay.
So my question is, how do you refer to one verse from previously where we have to show gratitude to 4 or 5 categories of people, and one of the categories demigods.
Yeah.
So I'm rephrasing this question. How do you show gratitude? I'm not talking about the respect. How do you show gratitude to the demigods?
By surrendering unto your spiritual master. Because, we should have the faith that these demigods are worshiping the feet of my spiritual master. If we don't have that faith, then you should not be worshiping your spiritual master either. Yasya deve parabhaktir yatha deve tatha guru tasyaiti karita hirta prakashante mahatmana. This is the final word of the Shruti mantra, Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Literally, this is the last verse of that book. And it is such a deep thing that when somebody has equal faith in Krishna and Guru, that person understands everything that the Vedas have to teach. If we have faith in that principle, and if we have faith in our Guru, then we can say this. The best way to worship anybody or to show gratitude to anybody is to give it where it belongs. You water the root. You give it to Krishna. Then they will say you're excused. Param Vijaya.
But then how can we say, someone, for example, you gave another example, someone is providing you housing here and he's bringing you to the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it's both at the same time. I know what you're getting at.
Yes.
It is both at the same time. But again, vidhi, we live a life of vidhi, and the injunction for the devotees is that we don't do these things. That's the injunction. In spirit, we should sympathize. In spirit, we should definitely be aware and grateful. But, mentally we offer respects. Rupa Goswami says. Somebody is a devotee, he may be Sakama devotee or not, but we mentally offer respects. Or, sometimes we go to the temples of demigods, I also do. We bow down. Hari Bhakti Vilas says you keep your right side to the devatas. You keep your left side to Bhagavan, and you bow straight to the spiritual master. If that's possible. In this temple, it's not possible. You see? But we can show ordinary respect, but we're not enjoined to do anything special beyond that. This is the vidhi. So ultimately, karya vijanataha yashastra vidhamut, shastra pramanante. On the basis of what the shastra enjoins you to do and not to do, that's how we act. Is that answering your question?
Yes, Prabhu, thank you.
Okay.
Prabhu, on this topic of gratitude, could you also say a few words about how you mentioned about Krishna and the nature and other living entities. At here we have this Surabhi project, so could you mind saying a few words about gratitude towards cows and the missing link in...
Yeah, there are five classes that we should show special care for. The Brahmanas, the elders, the women, the children, and the cows. And the cows are a very important part of that. In the modern culture, all of them are abused, if you think about it. All five of them are abused. Brahmins are abused. They have to lie in South India if you're a Brahmin. You can't admit that you're a Brahmin because you won't be able to get a job. Right? So many Brahmins have told me that. And, the women are abused. We know very well. That's why you get so many feminists, because it's a backlash, naturally. Children are abused. You know this. I mentioned the other day even. Cows, no need to speak of that. It's obvious. But when you live with cows, when you have a personal relationship with the cows, somebody told me the other day, a government man came to convince one farmer that, sell your cow and buy a tractor instead. And the farmer didn't want to do that. And this government man was trying to convince him, no, you should buy a tractor instead, it's better. Is to sell your cow. He said, I don't want to sell my cow. He said, why don't you want to sell my cow? Why don't you want to sell your cow? And the man said, because a tractor won't love me. This is personalism. Personalism. If you serve cows, you will not suffer. If you serve cows, you will become personal, very personal. Your brain will flourish, you see? You'll become pious. It's a very, very fast way to become pious, serving cows. In Vrindavan we have a Goshala. So many places we have Goshalas. Here you have a Goshala, or something, quasi-Goshala. Goshala in potentia, we might say in Latin. You see? Take it seriously. This is an important part of Prabhupada's mission. He said it's the remaining 50%, because Varnashram society depends on having cows and bulls, both of them. An agrarian-based economy is absolutely essential. It's not going to happen without that. So much to say. It's the subject of another lecture. I'm sorry I don't have that much time. It's getting late already. Okay? Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.